we do have a guest here today, Evan Ponter, who knows a heck of a lot about flows, but I'm guessing you're thinking more about building flows as opposed to reporting on flows. For both, okay. Now, interestingly, there is one in Lightning, there's one out-of-the-box report, sample report that you see in some orgs, and it has to do with, I think it's screen flows. There's something about, I don't know, have you ever reported on that, Evan?
Yeah, they give you the interview records for screen flows. So that's actually been really useful in some orgs where we're trying to troubleshoot something or
Uh-huh.
understand if somebody created a record directly or via a screen flow.
Are you asking for the link to the report? It's just a sample report in an org. I can probably. Are you seeing the Spring 23, Evan?
Yeah,
Okay, great. So it's just moving a little. It's got a little hesitation today. Let me see if I can switch over to the hardwire. So before we get started, we had a question from Arvinder, and of course I have 10,000. So the only sample report that comes with that is visible in Lightning that I know of is one related to screen flows. And it's the sample flow report screen flows. And that's in the public reports folder. So you could see this. I'm just in a dev org now, Arvinder, and you could see that report. Awesome. We've come to the top of the hour. We've got a pile of people who've joined in. It's great to see everyone. Happy New Year. Welcome back to the Dashboard Dojo. So great to see everyone. I still see people joining, so give it one more second. I'm so thrilled today to have Evan Ponter, who's truly a master of a number of things within Salesforce, having him join us today. It's very special. So happy New Year, everyone. We'll get started in just about 30 seconds. Let a few more people join. All right. Welcome to the Dashboard Dojo. This is our second Masters in the Dojo series, and we have a very special guest, Evan Ponter, joining us today. My name is David Carnes. So glad to have you back with us for another year of Dashboard Dojo. Somehow, 2.5 years have flown by. It's really been a lot of fun hosting the dojo. So, quick agenda. We'll just quick introductions. Want to spend some time introducing Evan. And Evan, I thought to take a trip down memory lane. I think these photos are from 2019. Maybe first seeing you speak at Northeast Dreamin, and then seeing you speak at Dreamforce, and then seeing you at the volunteer booth, the report and dashboard booth, answering questions, which was so cool.
hey, you really went through the archives here.
I probably have a lot more photos of you speaking at different events around the world. I want to take a minute since Spring 23 is upon us. The pre-release orgs have been out for a while. In fact, mine's already about to expire. It's sort of a bummer. I have to set up another one for the next dojo. But we've got a lot of features to talk about for Spring 23, and our next Dashboard Dojo on the 25th will be focused on all the great new features. So hopefully you can join us for that. I'll mention the upcoming training I'll do in February, and we've got a few more dojos scheduled, always looking for topics. I think one of the requests someone had a little over a year ago was analytic snapshots or reporting snapshots. And that by far has been the #1 watched YouTube video for the Dashboard Dojo after all this time, which was super fun. So it's your ideas that really are the valuable sessions. We have the chat open. We can take questions along the way. We'll also allocate some time toward the end for Q&A. Awesome. So let's get started. If you haven't met me before, my name is David Carnes. I'm the chairman of OpFocus. Really honored to be a Salesforce MVP. And I like to share something about myself in each session. Over the holidays, we took the kids on a road trip through Arizona and into Nevada, and I went off-roading in Sedona, and boy, is that fun. This is a single-seater Polaris Razor. And believe it or not, my son got his up to 67 miles an hour. You can imagine most of it was very technical what we were doing. Lots of boulders and just really interesting hills and whatnot. But some of it was just awesome, stunning, straight, flat, just improved dirt roads. And we went to a cliff dwelling that was like from the 13th century, which was super cool. But boy, was that fun. OpFocus is a consulting firm. We work with SaaS companies to optimize their revenue operations. It's just been a joy to be part of the Salesforce community since, well, for me, 2005. It's gone a long time. All right. One last note before we get started, the Dashboard Dojo, we have like 35 or more hours of recordings. The last session we did in November was driving adoption for your reports and dashboards. And there's a QR code here. It's literally just the recordings link on the Dashboard Dojo site. I've got lots and lots of recordings there on all kinds of topics. So hopefully that's useful for you. All right, so let's dive in. So Evan, thank you so much for joining us today. You are the founder and principal consultant of Ponter Solutions. I think you're coming up on 3 years. Is that correct?
Yeah. This April will be 3 years.
That's super. So excited for you. Your LinkedIn, I've got this listed here. You're also very active on Twitter at Real11Ponter. You're a Dreamforce event speaker. You're a Dreamin event speaker. You've spoken at events all around the world, which is super amazing. I know you frequently speak at user groups. Are you also a user group leader? I forget.
Yeah, I just became co-leader of the Columbia, Maryland user group.
Oh,
That's a
that's great.
recent development. Yeah.
Congratulations. Believe it or not,
Thanks.
I found a fun tweet. Just having seen you speak so many times at events all over, I thought this was such a cool thing that back in 2019 that you were saying you were new to the public speaking arena, which is hard to believe just how amazingly talented you are with your speaking. Evan is also the co-founder of reportforce.blog. If you've been on the Dashboard Dojo before, you've heard me talk about this. And one of the things we'll talk about today is this article or this area of research that Evan has done on really amazing innovations around deluxe report types. So I put the QR code there for that. If you're not familiar with this writing or this area of Evan's research and innovation, please check that out. And the blog is reportforce.blog. But Evan, welcome. So glad to have you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And where are you? You're dialing in, you mentioned from Maryland?
Yeah, I'm in Baltimore, Maryland, downtown with the exposed brick background that a lot of these older townhomes are known for. They're all built circa 1900, and as people renovate them, they would rip down the drywall and just leave the exposed brick and seal it up.
Well, very cool. That looks right. I mean, looking at the patterns behind you, not wanting you to turn around, but yeah, it's kind of a cool. I guess it's Lego-like, but can last for
It's
a long,
got
long time.
scars over history of all the changes that have been made, so you get to see all of that.
So Legos with scars.
Yeah.
That's great. So, Evan, I don't think I've ever asked you how you got involved with Salesforce. Take us back.
Sure. I had just graduated from University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and one of the professors I had went to work for this nonprofit that was affiliated with the university, and they did non-degree seeking education. And they were hiring all recent college grads to come work for them. So I was part of this like pool of people who came in to do this rotation program where we would sit in a few different departments and learn how the organization works to get some like real life work experience. Just so happened this organization used Salesforce to keep track of all their data. I had never heard of Salesforce before I got this job. In college, I was doing a lot of work with student event programming board on campus. They would plan events and stuff. And I ended up trying to organize their data. And at the time, the only thing I knew to use that was a centralized repository for data was Google Spreadsheets.
Cool.
So I was setting up these elaborate spreadsheets to have all the events on one tab, all of the people on one tab, and all of the locations on another tab, and using formulas to like make sure we only put a piece of information in one spot.
So you,
So when I
you
landed
effectively
at
you
this, yeah,
created a relational database.
yes, and I didn't know it. I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I just was looking for something like that. So I got really excited working at this first job, seeing what Salesforce was, and it started to dawn on me. This is the kind of thing I had been looking for while I was in college, trying to organize data. Naturally, I started tinkering with it. And being that it was a very small nonprofit, they gave everybody admin access. So I had the keys to the kingdom to sort of help me make my job easier by creating reports. I was setting up formula fields. I was Googling and finding the trail, or what was called the success community at the time. This was before Trailhead. This is 2012, 2013 era. So it was the Wild West of trying to find information, and I had just enough privilege without getting slapped on the wrist too many times to sort of tinker with Salesforce. And from there, it grew. I ended up doing some small projects for that organization. A year and a half later, I got certified. I landed a full-time admin job. So I had my first full-time admin job working in as Salesforce responsibilities in 2014. And from there, it's been a roller coaster of working for a few different full-time employers and then slowly slipping into a consulting role, which is where I'm at now.
All right. So I think I have a hint of what the answer might be, but how did you get interested in reporting?
Reporting interest really came from the first full-time admin job I had. I was part of this 10-person IT team that was all focused on Salesforce. They had myself and one other administrator. They had a couple developers. They had a couple project managers. And the whole company used Salesforce for every part of their process. From the time somebody submitted a lead, it created a lead record in Salesforce. There was a whole team of lead qualifiers setting up appointments for the sales team who was doing a homegrown CPQ configuration to then sell a solar panel system and have the operations team who was keeping track of every nut, bolt, and solar panel and rack in Salesforce with Salesforce records. Accounting was doing all of their accounting in Salesforce, and then the customer service team was addressing issues for customers using case management. So it was a wild thing to step into this and see how Salesforce can be used at scale, really for the first time in my life
Sounds
and
like wall to
career.
wall to wall.
Yeah. And the common thread that ran through all these requests that came into the IT department, and especially to me being their brand new second administrator, they doubled in capacity essentially. Everybody wanted to get data back out of the system, and nobody had a good idea of how to do it, me included. So I struggled for the first 8 months trying to address these report requests, and I was tinkering with standard reports. It wasn't working. I tried custom report types, and I think everybody falls into this rabbit hole of seeing how Salesforce will show you how to do stuff like this, where you relate different objects working your way top down. I didn't even understand that part of it. I just knew if I wanted more objects, I needed to relate them. So I was really banging my head against the wall trying to solve this problem for myself and for the company. And it sort of stumbled upon the deluxe report type framework that I've been
Well,
evangelizing since that moment. Yeah.
and even before that, there's a big step. Just clicking that link when editing in custom report type, clicking that link
Yeah.
to add fields related via lookup,
Yeah.
which so few people ever find. I mean, it just
Right.
opens this whole new world. So I'm excited for what you'll talk about. But before we get there, um, if you could lean back to either the student in college working on the spreadsheets or the Google Sheets, or to that first job where you're the admin, and give yourself a piece of advice, what's something you wish you'd known now, which you know now about reporting that you wish you knew at the beginning?
Everything is dependent on data architecture. I always come back around to that theme, and understanding that earlier on will really help you solve that problem first, and it makes all of the reporting endeavors so much easier. And the key thing there is to make sure you're mapping real life scenarios into the data architecture appropriately, using the appropriate one-to-many and many-to-many relationships. And I think just you can talk about data architecture for days and days and just really dive into the weeds of different strategies for doing that and the ramifications that has on a system like Salesforce, where the operational reporting is so dependent on the relationships and data structures you have in place.
Yeah, I know here on the dojo I've shared, and people have heard me say this before. The number one thing for me was a class I took over the summer it happened to be at Harvard, which was close to where I lived, their summer program on database management. And just like sort of understanding, my gosh, there are these things called relational databases, and data is
Yeah.
structured. And if you have normalized data, it
Mhm.
makes it a heck of a lot easier to report on. So it sounds like you and I have very similar sort of looking back um, appreciation for understanding data models and
Yeah.
how significant that is for reporting. So you are an incredibly popular speaker at Dreamin events, Dreamforce, user groups, all different kinds of things all over. What's inspired you to speak at these events?
Yeah. So when I stumbled upon a way to simplify reporting, I was joining a user group meeting around the same time. This is about 4 years into my Salesforce journey, and was pestering the community group leader to see if what I had discovered was new or if it's something that everybody knows about. 'Cause I had no thermometer for understanding what I was sitting on. So I talked to her about it, and it took a few tries, honestly, to get her to understand what I was talking about. And then she was like, "Well, you should just show us." And I was like, "Oh, I guess." She was like, "Yeah, I'll set you up as a speaker, and you'll present to the whole group, and we'll all learn about it together." And I'm like, "Okay." I had never done anything like that. I had zero speaking experience. And once I, did that first session and got to see the light bulb moment for everybody in the audience as I was going through this what turned into the deluxe report type framework, it was really inspiring for me. And it made me feel good finally after 4 years to start giving back to all the people who had helped me along the way. So I took that feeling and sort of ran with it to submit this talk and others to any sort of Salesforce or Dreamin event I could get my hands on and meet people in the community, do some networking, and give back by sharing the knowledge that I had figured out along the way.
It's awesome, and it's really in the spirit of Ohana that I know we both encountered all over. Just this willingness for people to share what they know, which makes this such a special community.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot. So
Okay.
you not only are a regular deep thinker, you're a regular speaker and a deep thinker on topics around analytics. You also have a following, a cult-like following for the flow related presentations that you do. Um, if like do you favor like tinkering on one versus the other? I'm really curious. Like it's not as common in the Salesforce community or to have somebody who's so deep in their not only their knowledge but their speaking capacity on two topics like this.
Yeah. So I think reports will always have my heart. I get excited every time I'm presenting on this topic, but there's so much demand for flows, and it is a lot of my day-to-day work that it seemed so natural to also speak on flow configurations as well. And I can get just as passionate there, but I don't feel like I'm doing anything really that groundbreaking on the flow side. I sort of organize it and show people what I'm doing. Whereas on the report side, I had searched for a long time to see if anybody else thought about it this way, and
I think
nobody was.
groundbreaking is a great word for just
Yeah.
the level of thinking and the innovation that you've brought to really expand. Because you think of how Salesforce has presented reporting all these years with these standard report types that are based on equijoins, and it's so limiting. And people
Yes.
don't realize like how incredibly limiting. It's not only like one arm tied behind the back, but it's like both arms tied behind the back, and you've got one leg hobbled. And
Hmm.
there are just some real limitations there compared to other types of reporting tools.
Yeah. So I enjoy both worlds. I enjoy all the worlds of Salesforce, and I'm sure there'll be future topics that I'll be asked to present on as I continue the journey around the world.
Tell us about the consulting work that you do.
Yeah, so I sort of slipped into that after presenting at all these events. I had people coming up to me, sharing information, and it turned out one of the people in the audience wanted me to come do some work for them. And I had a full-time job at the time, so I took it on as a moonlighting engagement. So I was doing nights and weekends, just helping them set up some structure. And initially, he told me I was going to be setting up reports for them, but I ended up becoming like their part-time admin for a long time. Actually, they're still a client to this day.
Awesome. Yeah.
And that was 2019 when I got a taste of that and really enjoyed that work. The focus it has on I'm not just an IT guy, part of this company, and has to help with printers and Microsoft and all this other stuff, but being a focused independent Salesforce consultant allows me to spend all my time solving Salesforce problems. So I took steps to gravitate towards this independent consulting career at this point between 2019 and started full-time independent consulting in April of 2020.
You're living the dream.
Yeah,
How
it's been
can
wonderful.
Yeah, I'm so happy for you. It's really just been fun to watch all these years that I've known you. How can somebody contact you?
So my email is evan@pontersolutions.com. Put that in the chat. You can also find me on Twitter at real_evan_ponter, and LinkedIn is linkedin.com/n/utponter. So you got all three of those links there if you want to get in touch with me.
Awesome. All right. So you talked about the deluxe report types before. I shared the link to the considerable amount of work you've written on reportforce.blog with that. Um, uh, Tell us about deluxe report types and take us on a journey there. I think we've got a wonderful audience today. People are really interested in hearing what you're thinking about and what you're interested in. This
Sure.
is obviously an area you've just taken so far. So take us on a journey with that.
Yeah. So I just posted the final link in there is a Google Doc that has sort of all the resources about deluxe report types. I'll give you a brief uh, dive into that if you haven't seen that before. I really wanted to focus most of this presentation on now that we have deluxe report types, what do we do next? Sort of get into some of the advanced join scenarios. But if you haven't seen the deluxe report types before, let me just show you briefly what the idea is there. So what I've done is simplified the process of getting data out of the system by eliminating a lot of the built-in filters that normally come with the standard reports, or if you're working with custom report types and you keep joining other objects. So in the setup menu, I go to report types and I set up a custom report type for every single object that I want to report on. And in here, I'll use opportunities as the example. The primary object you select is sort of the very first filter that you are applying to your data set. And it's really narrowing the world of opportunities that you have for what kind of data you'd like to visualize. So I'm going to specify opportunities as the primary object. And for the label, I like to call all my deluxe report types the name of the object followed by deluxe in parentheses. This is one of many steps I take to separate this trusted report type from all of the other noise that you might have in your Salesforce org. Last thing I like to do is in the description, list exactly what the results of this report type give you. Each detail row represents an opportunity record. What this does is makes it super clear before you even begin building a report. This is the kind of data you're going to see in the report results. This description is visible when you're selecting a report type now in Lightning, which is new as of a few releases ago. So you can put any other helpful information here that you'd like to see. You want to mark your report type as deployed so that people can use it. And here is one of the pieces of magic with the deluxe report type framework. When we get to this page where you are defining other objects you want to enforce in this custom report type configuration, we don't want to add any other filters here. Every time you relate another object, you are joining records from another table, but you're also adding a filter. And the more filters you add at this stage, the harder it is to have a report type that's flexible for a bunch of different reporting scenarios. So for deluxe report types, at its core, we don't add any filters to the report type configuration. We just want to report on our opportunity records and click the save button when we get to this page. And then most of the magic for deluxe report types comes at this point. And I really wish Salesforce would make this a 3-step wizard instead of the 2 steps you normally see. Down here at the bottom of the report type we just created, there's this edit layout button. And once you edit the layout, you have access to all of the fields that are on whatever objects you've enforced in your report type. They are added to the layout automatically. If you ever have any new fields, they'll show up in the panel over here on the right as you scroll through. Just above that, as David and I have touched on briefly, there's this add fields related via lookup hyperlink.
It's like
It's
it almost
nestled in
couldn't
here.
be hidden any better. It's like if
Right,
they put it in camouflage, maybe.
right. You have to, yeah, you wouldn't even notice it. All these other things that are sort of distractions, but this should be 100 times bigger and have fireworks, because this is where you can traverse all of the relationships that you've painstakingly set up after you've understood the impacts of data modeling and translating your real life scenarios into technical data architecture. All of those relationships you've set up on your primary object, in this example, opportunities, you can traverse them. And you can grab any field you want from that parent object. So I've traversed that account relationship. I have access to all of the fields on the account object. I can select all of them if I want to. Report types allow you to have up to 1,000 fields included in the layout. So if you take an extra second at this point and make sure you deselect any fields not being used in your implementation, you shouldn't ever run into that 1,000 field limitation. Be a little bit picky with the fields. Make sure you're using ones that have data in them that are actually being used in your implementation that people would want to report on. When you include those fields, they show up with a magnifying glass icon that lets you know they're a reference field, comes from some other object. Any of these fields that are included in the layout can be used as columns in your report results. They can be used as field filters as you're filtering through your data. We can keep going back to this add fields related via lookup. We can traverse a relationship like contact. I have access to all these contact fields, but you'll also notice that I can traverse the relationships on that object as well. So you're not just limited to one level of relationship traversal here. If I want to know more information about the contact owner, I can click view related fields there. Notice the path at the top here has taken me through both of those relationships. I can traverse up to the account for that contact, and I can go up to the owner for that account. I have traversed 4 relationships for a total object hierarchy of 5 objects. So that takes you one level further than you could normally do if you were trying to enforce objects using that top-down method that Salesforce sort of trains people on as you're setting up your report type configuration. At any of these steps along the way, you can select all the fields that you want to include in your report type layout. The last thing I like to do once I have all of these fields on the layout is organize them into sections. I like to create a new section at least for every unique object that I'm referencing. This was accounts. You can use the shift key on your keyboard to first click on the first field you want, shift, and then click on the last one. You can select all those fields in bulk and drag them down into that new section. These sections show up as folders when you're in the report builder. So I'll show you a quick example of that. Here are those folders when you're looking at the all fields panel. They also show up as you're adding columns. You'll see those section headers show up as you scroll through here. So it's a really great way to help organize all of your fields into appropriate sections. I've seen people go as far as organizing into the same sections they have on their page layouts, just to make it absolutely clear for people where that field lives, what object it comes from.
The question for you. Do you ever, so like that name that you're hovering on now, the left to right real estate is significant, opportunity created by colon full name.
Yeah.
And if you add fields related via lookup and you're adding from 3 or 4 objects
Mhm.
away, you're getting every one of those object names. So your column name becomes quite long. Do you ever trim those down?
I have. So let's do an example of that. Let's go grab something really ridiculous. This is 5 objects away. I've got let's do just the active checkbox for this account owner. Got that on my layout. If you double click on any one of these fields while you're editing the report type layout, you'll see 2 options. The first one is the display as option. This works like a field alias, if you're familiar with SQL. It doesn't change the field's label, it doesn't change its API name, it just changes how this field displays in this custom report type. So you have a lot of flexibility here to shorten up this label and have it be something short and sweet. So account owner active, maybe something like that. That's a great way to shorten up those mile-long labels. It also helps if you need to rename a field for the purposes of reporting. I have seen solutions where there's a deluxe report type set up for a specific department that will translate the field labels into terms that make sense for them. That's another cool thing you can do with this. The other option you have here is checked by default. What that does is it creates a template for you. Anytime you create a brand new report using this custom report type, the fields you have marked as checked by default will automatically show up as columns. So it's a great way to jumpstart people so they're looking at some sample data as they're getting started building a report. I've also seen the flip side of that where people want to start with a completely blank slate every time they build a brand new report. If you're working with a custom report type, you can go edit the layout and find all these fields that have the check mark icon next to them, edit those details, and deselect checked by default. Last tip I want to show, I have to exit full screen for this one, is I was doing this and wanted to find a faster way to update all these labels in bulk. So what I've discovered is you select a bunch of fields and either double click on it or hit this edit properties button, you get those same 2 options for all of the fields that you've selected. And I was going through here, and this was a little bit better to shorten up these labels, but I really just wanted to replace all of this first part of the text with uh, nothing and sort of get rid of it. So I found out if I show this modal window as a browser tab, it allows you to access your browser extensions. So if I do that, I've now shown that modal window as a tab. I can highlight the text that I want to replace. Maybe I want to just get rid of opportunities. Copy it, and I'm using this Google Chrome extension called Search and Replace. I can put a link in the chat. It's in the Google Doc that I linked to if you open that up. I can search for specific text on the web page and replace it with something else.
It's awesome.
So I'll hit replace all and just get rid of that opportunity piece of the name all the way through. So that really changed the game as far as managing all these labels in bulk to set some default naming conventions.
And that, like, the blow your mind sort of power here is you can relate, is it up to 60 objects?
Yeah, so up to 60 unique objects can be referenced in your custom report type. So you can really use this add fields related via lookup to spiderweb your way through your org to bring in all the relevant information you'd like to reference in your reports. The one thing to keep in mind is this is all dependent on your data architecture. You can only traverse upwards. What I mean by that is you can go from the many side of a one-to-many relationship to the one side. going from child to parent, working your way up your data architecture hierarchy. A lot of people get excited about this and think you can go up and then back down somewhere else. That is not possible. So you do need to have the right relationships in place to make sure you can start with the details you want to see in your report and then reference all of the parent, grandparent, great grandparent, and so on, all of their information as reference fields, reference columns that can be also used as filters while you're doing your reporting.
So you'd say that these are really, really useful for those objects that are lower level. So like in the OpFocus system, we had an object for years and years. We had expense reports, and then we had another one, expense report line items.
Yes.
We might create a deluxe report type on the lowest level object, expense report line items, and then
Yeah.
from there use the related lookup, and we could pull in project details, contracts, opportunities,
Mhm.
accounts that are all tied through lookups to that low
Yes.
level expense report line item.
Absolutely. And the key thing to think of there is what level of detail do you want to see in your report results? What do each of those detail rows represent? What kind of records? And that sort of helps you understand where you want to be building your deluxe report types. And then when you're going to select a report type for any situation, you'll know which one to use for the job. So let me jump into that real quick to show you the last piece here about switching to this framework and this mindset. As we're selecting a report type, this is all on the actual report tab. We're not in the setup menu at all for any of this. When I click new report, this new lightning experience for selecting report type has a bunch of goodies in it that just came out about a year ago. You have these categories on the left that sort of help you see those different categories that report types fall into. Uh, the all categories probably what you're going to want to click on, but you can search through here and find a report type you want to use. But when you click on one of these, let me do a couple things. If I search for deluxe, since I'm using a naming convention, I can very quickly see all of my deluxe report types. If I want to understand how these were configured, I can click on it, and this is where you'll see that description for your report type. And if you scroll down in this panel, it'll show you reports that you've created or created by others that use this report type. And then the objects used in this report type. This will show you if there are any object relationships being enforced. So that's a really great way to understand, do I want to use this report type for the report request I'm about to embark on? The other thing that's handy is you can now check to see what fields are in this report type. This will show you all of the fields that are included on the layout. So anything that you've added as a reference from another object, you can search for that here to see if that example, to see if they show up. So I have like account name, the contact owner full name, there's a bunch of other stuff in here. One of the other things you can do right from this screen is hide report types. This has long been available in Classic. It is now available in Lightning. What I would recommend is you can really eliminate a lot of the noise if you want to embrace this deluxe report type framework wholeheartedly. You can spend some time on this page to hide the standard report types or report types that come with managed packages or other custom report types you no longer want people to use. All it takes is selecting one of these and saying, I want to hide it. Any of your hidden report types will show up down here at the bottom of the category panel in the hidden report types category. So if you ever change your mind and want to bring something back to life, you can come into here and say show report type. That'll add it back to the list.
And everyone
This
should,
show and
oh,
hide is an organization-wide setting. There is no granularity for profiles or permission sets. So something is either hidden or visible.
so sorry, just thought to lean in with a couple of questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Sam asked the question, he's pretty excited about this. He's saying, assuming you start at the bottom of your data hierarchy, would you say that this is the primary method for making reports? Meaning, is there any case where a simpler report has a function a deluxe report does not? It sounds like,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what I like to do with this deluxe report type framework is show it as like a baseline using the simplest configuration that I can guarantee will work for you, uh, assuming you're not trying to do something complex. Part of what I'm going to be showing in a few minutes here is once you understand that framework, I'm going to talk about some of the limitations that come with not enforcing any other objects and things you can do to remedy that so you can take advantage of some of the other native reporting features. So stay tuned and we'll get into some of those examples of where you might want a different report type configuration.
So Chris asked a question, what you select at the primary object level, will that drive the show me filter on a report?
Yes, absolutely. That's one of the examples I'm going to get into.
Awesome. Okay, and Carol asked a question about determining what object should be selected when creating the deluxe report type. She's saying, should it be opportunities or even a lower level object?
Yeah, so for that, you kind of want to examine your organization and build a deluxe report type for each object that you would want to show up as the detail rows in a report. So I have here accounts deluxe, every row is an account record. I also have contacts deluxe, every detail row is a contact record. Now in this contacts deluxe, I can reference information from the account, but the difference, depending on which one I want to use for a situation, depends on the report request. Do people want to see a list of account records in the results, or do they want to see a list of contact records that simply reference account information? Answering that question is going to get tricky depending on how your report requests are being defined. A lot of times you'll end up doing some translating to understand if a fundraising team wants to know what is the total amount of donations raised last year and slice and dice that by the type of account and the type of donor. You're going to have to translate that into boiling it down to what kind of records are the details here when I use that tabular view of the report results. For that example, you're probably going to be looking at either opportunities or perhaps payments if you're in the NPSP world. And then you'll have access to all of that customer data and opportunity data by relating the fields via lookup. So hopefully that makes sense. That is sort of the last skill here to master is once you have these deluxe report types set up, understanding which one is appropriate for every reporting request that you get. Okay. Any other questions, David?
Nope. Thank you for answering those.
Yeah. So that was a quick and dirty on deluxe report types. That Google Docs has a bunch of documentation and links and videos and blog posts that you can read to really dive into that if you'd like to learn more. What I wanted to sort of focus on today was some of the more advanced scenarios. We even had a couple questions already. So deluxe report types are great, but now what? Like, how do we build on that framework and that foundation in order to really take our reporting skills to the next level? It's like Pamela is having trouble with the link. Let me copy that real quick. So here's that Google Doc again with all those resources. Let's get into this. So Deluxe Report Types provides a solid foundation of simple, flexible, and reliable data sets. They can be your go-to for most reporting scenarios. I will not say all, but most. And when you run into these issues, which we're going to talk about here, you can just build on what you know about report types and solve that problem and use some of the standard features that Salesforce offers. One of the concepts to really make sure you're aware of is the reason I have eliminated all of the joins in the object relationships is to make sure there are no filters embedded in that report type configuration. But something to consider is if you are joining records across a required relationship, you're not actually filtering out child records in those report results. So there are lots of scenarios where you're going to want to enforce objects in your report type configuration, and you could still call it a deluxe report type. it allows you to do a couple interesting things. So let me show you one of the examples that comes up a lot is people get excited about deluxe report types. They go and try to create a deluxe report type on something like opportunity products. They find that that is not an option. So here's the opportunity product object. It has this relationship to the opportunity. And even though it doesn't show up here as a master detail relationship, this is a required relationship. I can prove it by trying to create a brand new opportunity line item without specifying an opportunity, get an error that says required fields are missing. You must have an opportunity. Now, because of that fact, you will never have an opportunity product that does not specify an opportunity. We can build a deluxe report type that shows you opportunity product records as the results. You get all the wonderful benefits of deluxe report types, and there are no filters that are negatively impacting your report results. The way we do that is we can specify a different object as the primary object, the parent, that required parent. If we start with opportunities here as the primary object, I'm still building an opportunity product deluxe report type. Each detail row here is going to show me an opportunity product record that is related to an opportunity, AKA all of them, because that is a required relationship. And when we go to the next page, we have these object relationships. I'm going to add opportunity product here. And what's happening is we are fundamentally changing what the results of this report type are going to look like. No longer are we reporting on opportunity records. We are looking at a list of opportunity products, and each opportunity product must specify an opportunity. So this inner join data set that we get with these report results will function like an opportunity product deluxe report type. And from here, we can edit the layout and we can add in all the custom fields we want to reference from any parent object of either of these two objects. So we can get all the product information going up through those relationships, or we can get account information, account owner, created by, all of that wonderful stuff via the products relationships. So I'll show you that real quick. Once you have more than one object, you will see options for each one in the report type layout editor. So you can choose which one you want to start from in order to add some related fields. So this allows you to traverse those opportunity relationships, whereas the products object will allow you to traverse those opportunity product relationships.
I think you deserve a standing ovation for this area of your thinking and innovation. It's just so important. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say I can't do what I need to do with opportunity products.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this opens up a whole world of options. You can take that a couple steps further than just two levels of relationships. Let's say you're using opportunity product schedules. You can set up a deluxe report type for that type of object, for those records. So you would do the same thing. You would start with a parent that you know has an enforced relationship and just work your way down to the object you're interested in, enforcing you're adding technically those filters along the way, but because the data model enforces that each one of those fields must specify a value, they don't negatively impact your results. So even something that looks complex like this can still be a deluxe report type because it follows the same principles, that we're not adding a filter that we would not be able to take out later when we're doing our report building. As somebody mentioned earlier, what does the show me filter do? The show me filter in a report builder applies to the owner of the primary object. So you can take advantage of this fact and configure your report types accordingly to get the desired results. So here's an opportunities deluxe report type, just has opportunities. And when I use the show me filter, which is here, this allows you to dynamically filter the results of your report for the user who's currently viewing that report. hugely powerful so that you don't have to maintain 100 different versions of the same report. You can build one that says my opportunities, and every member of your sales team can view that same report to see results that are relevant for them. It also works across your role hierarchy if you wanted to have managers see all of their results for their team. So hugely powerful, but this is tied to the owner of the primary object that's set up in your custom report type. So sometimes I've had a request for a sales team who wants to see a list of opportunity records that are related to accounts that are owned by the current user viewing the report. How do we do that? Well, we can set up a custom report type where accounts is the primary object so that we get that show me filter tied to the owner of the account, but we want the results to show us opportunity records. So what we do here is we enforce that relationship, say show me accounts with opportunities, which changes how the detail rows display in that report. You're going to see a detail row for each opportunity record that specifies an account. Now, when we run that report and use the show me filter, we can say, show me my accounts. And this will dynamically run for each member of the sales team, showing them a list of opportunities that are related to the accounts they own. So we don't care who owns the opportunity, we just care who owns the account. So that's another cool way to take advantage of some of these different features. Okay, I'll keep going unless David interrupts me if there are questions pertinent to this. Cross filters can start from any object you specify in the object relationships. I do a whole presentation on this. It's one of the pictures that David had at the top here, where it was from this presentation. There's a whole world of things you can do with cross filters once you understand deluxe report types and then some of the implications of enforcing other objects in your report type configuration. So what we can do is on this same report, actually, I'll show you that. You can add a cross filter from the filters panel, this drop-down menu. And the options you have here to start your cross filter can either be accounts or it can be opportunities, because I've enforced both objects in the report type configuration. A report request for something like this would be, show me a list of open opportunities that are related to accounts that have open cases. So we don't need to see the cases, we just need to add a filter here to make sure that the account has an open case, but we want to display all of the open opportunities for that account. Because accounts is the primary object here, it's enforced in those object relationships. We can start our cross filter from the account and say, show me accounts with cases. Then we can add additional filter criteria to our cross filter to say, make sure that the case is not closed. So closed equals false. Our result here, without having to export to Excel and do a bunch of comparisons, is I have a report type that shows me opportunities related to accounts. I'm only looking at opportunities that are related to accounts that I own. The type is gig. Those opportunities are open, and the accounts that those opportunities are related to have at least one open case. Super complex, very specific, but we get all of those wonderful results at the few clicks of a button because we have understood the ramifications of these report type configurations, how to use a cross filter, and we bring it all together to really narrow in on that one specific opportunity for this account that has an open case.
I get weepy when I see cross filters.
Yeah.
It's just so awesome.
They can do so much. I spend a lot of time on the Trailblazer community showing people that a lot of the requests they have can easily be solved with a cross filter. It's a wonderful way to add some of those advanced filter options and get exactly the data you're looking for. So this is the sort of the last thing I want to get into. We've talked a lot about joins. I've shown you deluxe report types at its core don't have any joins. If you need to get a little bit fancier, you can use this inner join scenario that will change the results, but as long as you're not doing something that negatively impacts your results, it is totally valid to do this. What I like to do is turn these sideways because Salesforce architecture is so dependent on the data architecture hierarchy. When we say A records with B records, we mean a parent record with children. I'll do that for each of these. So a left join is something where you want to see the results for that same inner join middle section, but you also want to include all of the parent records that don't have any children. This comes up a lot if you're doing any sort of goal versus actual reporting, whether that's forecasting quotas or you have some custom object set up and you are relating those to your actuals, where the actuals are the child records. You'll want to set up a with or without style report like this so that you can see all of the goal records, regardless if they have any actuals yet, but you definitely want to include the actuals and relate them to the goals that they're tied to. So that's a very common use case for setting up one of these styles of reporting. It also comes up in the nonprofit world if you're doing any sort of as of reporting. I've had a lot of requests for show me the payments made against a donation as of the end of last month. You can set up one of these opportunities with or without payments style report types, and then it allows you to filter each side of those two tables independently. So you can say, show me all the opportunities that were open at the end of last month, and then only show me payments that came in before that date. And it allows you to exclude all of the future payments. So that's a cool way to do stuff. The thing that Deluxe report type sort of opens you up to is this concept of a right join, which, depending on how theoretical you get, doesn't actually exist. But when we turn it sideways, what I want to emphasize here is Deluxe report types allow you to see all of the records from the child object and include results from the parent that it's related to. You're not getting access to any parent records that don't specify children. But again, what we're focused here is we want to see the specific detail records for the object we've chosen for our deluxe report type.
It's a wonderful way to
The
show it.
yeah, the reason this works in Salesforce is because when you add fields related to VLOOKUP, it implicitly joins the tables similar to how dot notation access works in SOQL. It's one of those Salesforce specific features that sort of make all of this possible as far as I can deduce what's happening behind the scenes.
So we've got a couple of questions, Evan, and
Sure.
we're coming up to the top of the hour. So Maida asked, can you share your cross filter presentation?
Yeah, I definitely have the slides. I don't think I have a video recording of that, but let me find that real quick. And you can ask the next question while I find that.
Okay, the next question has to do with opportunity team member and product codes report. And I wonder if that's going up and down the, you mentioned before about, you can go one direction, essentially up with the deluxe report types, but would struggle
Right.
to potentially go down to get opportunity product codes, essentially.
Yeah. I don't know if we have enough time for this, but that was the last thing I was going to get into, which I think might work for that scenario. Let's just talk about it real quick, and then we can apply it. So the last kind of join that I have been working on, this is like, we have exited beginner and we are now moving into like some advanced stuff that gets me really excited, but it might be a little too much to digest. There is such thing as a cross join available in operational reporting in Salesforce. This is also known as a Cartesian join or a Cartesian product. What it does is you can take the records from one set of results and what I like to call it, multiply it by the records from another set of results. So if you have 3 records here and 3 records here, you'll end up with 9 results in your report results. And I think that might work for what you're trying to do. So I wrote this up to show you how you can set up a cross join in Salesforce. You must be trying to cross join records from a junction object with records that are related to one of the parent objects of that junction object. You have to do this for a junction object where there are two required relationships. A lot of the standard junction objects will do that for you, like the scenario Pamela was asking about. If you're doing custom architecture, you'll have to set up master detail relationships. The report type for that looks like this. So you're going to want to start with the parent object for one of the parents of that junction object. And when you go to select a child here, the example I'm going to use is trying to combine campaign members with opportunities. There's no direct relationship, but we can do this with this cross-join Cartesian product. So campaign members is an option here, but we also have contacts. That's the other parent object of that junction, the campaign members junction. So I can select campaigns with contacts, and then this works top down like you're used to, and you can select any child object for contacts. So I can choose opportunities here, and the results work like this. So here's that data architecture. The results, here's like a joined report showing that there's 3 records in each table, 3 opportunities, 3 campaign members. But when I use a report type set up to do a cross join, I get 9 records in my detail rows. It gives you every combination of campaign member and opportunity. And what I've done is I can take this, and to actually make it useful, I would probably group by the campaign name so that we could total up the opportunities for that person and sort of apply that amount to all the campaigns that they were part of. Pamela, I think for you, you could do this with product codes.
It depends on the opportunity to opportunity team relationship, what's under the hood.
Yeah, so you want to start with like products and say products with opportunities, and then from there, opportunities with team members, I think would get you results that look like this. And then you'd have to apply some filtering so that you can narrow down those results to make them something useful.
Well, Evan, this is so awesome. You've inspired every one of us here today. We're going to have you back on the Dashboard Dojo to share other things that you're thinking about, but what a treat it is to have you here. Thank you for putting your contact information. For everyone who's been part of the dojo today, thank you for being part of us, part of this group. We'll meet again on January 25th. Hope you can join us to dig into the spring 23 release. But again, thank you so much, Evan. Really a pleasure, and excited to see what you present on next.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Take care, everyone.